Legal remedies refers to remedies that are available through the court system and are based on the law. They are usually monetary in nature and are for damages or like compensation. Equitable remedies are remedies that are based on the principles of equity and fairness. They are usually non-monetary and are injunctions, specific performance, and declaratory judgments. Equitable remedies have their roots in like the English legal system. They were derived from a separate court system called the Court of Chancery, which handled cases where legal remedies were insufficient or inadequate. The Court of Chancery developed a body of law based on the principles of equity and fairness, which became known as equity law. The most common equity remedies were injunction, specific performance, and rescission. Examples of equity remedies include injunctions, which I already mentioned, and they are court orders that require a person or someone, doesn't matter who, to stop doing something and to do something which is like mandatory. Another example is specific performance, which is a court order that requires a person or an entity to perform a specific action, such as fulfilling the terms of a contract, like continuing to like pay stuff. A third example is rescission, which is that cancels a contract or a transaction and restores the parties of their original position. In the case of Rediner versus Boehringer, I'm gonna just pronounce it so bad. So in 2002, the plaintiff filed a lawsuit against the defendant for breach of contract and sought an equitable remedy of specific performance. The plaintiff had a contract to sell a certain number of cattle to the defendant, but the defendant had refused to accept the cattle. The court granted the plaintiff's request for a specific performance and ordered the defendant to accept the cattle. So that was just like one example. In the case of Stulsay versus Salt River Project, Agricultural Improvement and Power District, in 1998, this was in Arizona, the plaintiffs had filed a lawsuit against the defendant for breach of contract and sought for an equity remedy of injunction. They had a contract to lease the land for the defendant for farming, but the defendant had terminated the lease early. The court ended up granting the plaintiff's request for an injunction and ordered the defendant to allow the plaintiff to continue farming the land until the end of their term or their lease. Another case is State versus Mahoney versus, it's Mahoney versus Magna Cooper. This case includes it talks about execution and mining. Sorry, I'm going through my notes. If we're looking at explicit execution in a court, a request that requires an individual or a substance to play out at a particular activity, for example, like satisfying the details of an agreement, or like the off chance that an individual has an agreement to purchase a piece of property and the vendor was like penetrates or like tells the individual that he has like offered it to like another person, and the purchaser might look for an even-handed cure of explicit execution is what it's called, to require the dealer to offer the property to the original purchaser. And then I do have my sources. They are right here. I'm trying to figure out how to turn my camera around, or I guess I can just show you like this. These are my sources. But yeah,